Hey, what's up? Fettuccine Alfredo is both very delicious and a total gut bomb. But how heavy this dish hits totally depends on how you make it. So today, I'm gonna show you how to use only 2 ingredients to make a lighter, more delicious fettuccine that isn't just a pile of gloppy carbs. I mean, technically it's still gonna be a pile of carbs, but it's not gonna be gloppy. To get started on the fettuccine part of this dish, I need to make some fresh egg pasta dough. For that, I'll grab 280 grams of all-purpose flour and dump it onto my counter. Next, I'll make a deep indent into that flour pile. Now, it's a volcano, and into that caldera, I'll carefully add my eggs so they don't flow over the side. When I say eggs, I'm referring to 2 large eggs, 4 egg yolks, and then 25 to 30 grams of water. I'll stir that to combine until the whites and yolks are relatively integrated, and there we go. Now, using a fork, I'm gonna stir to get the flour and eggs inside the volcano combined. The idea here is to slowly incorporate the wet with the dry in a way that avoids clumpiness and overall messiness. This is a tried and true classic Italian granny technique, but the problem here is that I always go too fast and break the volcano. And now I've got egg on my board and I'm a total loser. The more rustico and less refined way to do this is to just smash everything into a pile. This way of mixing is real shaggy and sticky at first, but after 5 minutes or so of squeezing and kneading everything together, it forms a nice dough like this. That's easy enough, but I'm feeling like this dough is a little bit dry, so I'll add in a tiny splash more water, maybe 5 to 10 more grams, and I'll knead that in. The final amount of water in this dough depends on how thirsty your flour is on any given day, so pay attention and be ready to add either a touch of flour to a wet dough or a touch of water to a dry one. I'll keep kneading this for another 3 to 4 minutes or so, and after 8 to 9 minutes of total work here, I've got a tidy, soft, well-developed dough. Now, this dough needs to hydrate a little bit longer, and the gluten inside needs to rest, so I'll wrap it up with plastic wrap and throw it into the fridge to firm up for 20 minutes. While that does its thing, let me take a second to clarify why exactly I'm making fresh pasta for this dish. Number 1, fresh pasta has a chew to it and variety of texture that plain dried fettuccine just does not. Number 2, fresh pasta grips this dish's very simple sauce a lot better than dried pasta. But I'll mention that if you can get bronze dye extruded dried egg pasta like this, you can sub that in and skip the whole pasta from scratch situation. The bronze dye gives the exterior of the pasta more grip so the sauce doesn't slide right off. After 20 minutes in the fridge, this dough is relaxed, fully hydrated, and as you can see, very pliable. Now, I'll cut it in half into 2 8-ounce or 225 gram size chunks, and I'll take the half that I'm not rolling and wrap it in a damp paper towel to keep it from drying out. Now, I'll lightly flour the dough on my board, and then using a rolling pin, I'll flatten it into a roughly 3/4 inch thickness, give or take. I'm flattening it so that I can fit it through the mouth of my pasta roller. Speaking of which, for sheeted egg pasta, I use the roller attachment for my KitchenAid stand mixer. Overall, I've had a really good experience with this tool specifically, and I can definitely recommend it. If you don't have the roller and or the mixer though, this recipe will definitely work for the hand crank ones you see at the supermarket. Now, I'll get this mixer set up perpendicular to my bod, turn it on low speed, and then open the roller outside of its widest setting. That means wider than the number 1. From there, I'll make sure my flattened dough is well lubed up with all-purpose flour, and then I'll run it through the machine. Oh hey, there's a poppy seed in there from my bagel. Whoopsies. Next, I'll crank this roller down to the number 1 setting. I'll roll the dough through and then crank it down to the number 2 and roll it through one more time. Once the dough is flattened and about 30 inches across like this, we need to turn it into a useful shape for making square pasta sheets. To do that, I'm going to fold the tapered ends together, then I'll fold it in a way that gives me a rectangle that is roughly the width of the roller edge to edge, or about 6 inches if I had to guess. See that? Now we've got 2 straight sides. Those sides are going to be the new edges for our sheet, and that'll give us very straight sheets of dough that are easy to cut into noodles. I'll finish this step by rolling the rectangle about 3/4 of an inch thick so that will fit inside the mouth of the roller. From here, I'll open the roller past the number 1, just like before, then I'll feed in my dough. As you can see, this sheet is almost exactly the width of the rollers themselves, and that's great news for getting a proper yield of noodles out of this dough later on. The next step here is to turn the machine down to number 1, roll it through. I'll step it down to number 2, roll it through, and then guess what? I'll step it down to 3, and then roll it through. After 4 passes through the machine, the dough will start to get tacky, and that's not good because it will stretch out unevenly. So I'll stop, dust both sides liberally with flour to keep things from sticking, and then I'll roll this through on the number 4. By the way, I use the back of my wrist to move this pasta sheet around the work area because the wrist has a lot of surface area, and that kind of spreads out the weight of this very soft, very pliable dough, and that keeps the sheet from getting deformed or stretched out in a weird way. Now I'm going to roll this through on number 5, then the number 6, and instead of going down to number 7, I'll roll it through on 6 for a second time. For this dish, we want relatively thick pasta, and number 7, in my opinion, is too thin. Thin pasta falls apart and just doesn't have the bite that we're looking for. Overall, I'd say we're looking at about the thickness of a penny. I don't know, what is that, maybe 1/16 of an inch? Next, I'll cut off the pointy, deformed ends of each sheet, then I'll measure its length. An 8-ounce chunk of dough, when rolled to this thickness, should give us a length of about 38 to 46 inches, give or take. This sheet's 40 inches, so I'll cut it into 4 10-inch size sheets. Next, I'll dust those liberally with semolina flour to keep them from sticking together, and then I'll stack all 4 sheets, move them to a cutting board, and I'll fold those sheets in half. From there, I'll turn it 90 degrees and then cut an 1/8 inch or so off the edge to clean it up. Now, I'll cut these sheets into roughly 3/4 inch wide strips. And if you're thinking, hey, Bri, that's a lot thicker than fettuccine. Yes, you're right, but I think this dish is actually a lot more fun with a wider, chunkier noodle, like say pappardelle or tagliatelle. I actually got the idea for the pappardelle from a fellow YouTuber. The channel is called Sip and Feast, and it's awesome. I'll link to it down below. I highly recommend you check it out. Once these noodles are all cut up, I'll fluff them up, and again, make sure they're well dusted with semolina flour to keep them from sticking together. Now would be the time to roll out the other half of the dough, but since I think it's easier to illustrate how this dish comes together with just 8 ounces of this pasta, I'm only gonna cook half for this video. But if you're feeding 4 people here, feel free to do this all at once. Just double the amount of butter and cheese and use your largest saute pan. So to get this pasta cooked, I'll drop a strong grip of salt into about 3 quarts of water, and then I'll drop in 8 ounces or 225 grams of our pasta. Right away, I'll jump into this water with some tongs and gently toss this pasta to keep it from being stuck together. With fresh sheeted egg pasta, especially, sticking is a lot more of a risk than it is with dried pasta. Once this pasta is tossed up, I'll drop a 10-inch nonstick pan over low heat to gently warm up. This is going to be the place where we make the very delicate, very simple Alfredo pan sauce. If you haven't cooked a lot of fresh pasta, I'll mention here that it cooks really quickly. If you kept it thick like I recommended earlier, this pasta should take only about 3.5 minutes to get to al dente. That's plenty of time for me to quickly thank the sponsor of this video, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark VPN, or Virtual Private Network, keeps you safe online by covering up everything you do. When your device connects to the internet, whether that's a hotspot or some sketchy public Wi-Fi in the Dallas airport, all of the information going to and from your computer or phone or tablet is basically blurred to the internet, also known as encryption. So next month, when Lauren and I are visiting Paris on a super secret YouTube mission, no creeps will be able to get our passwords or banking info, and we can feel confident using public Wi-Fi. When we're at home, we use Surfshark all the time, specifically when we're out in public at a coffee shop or when we're trying to watch our shows that aren't available here in the US.
How did that feel, losing to a girl?
You know, you should really look in the mirror before you call yourself that.
Can we all agree that there should have been way more Paul Rudd and way less Tom Selleck?
Oh.
So if you want to secure yourself online anywhere in the world and maybe watch Friends one more time, Surfshark is offering viewers of this channel 83% off plus 3 extra months for free with my link and promo code. Head to surfshark.deals/Lagerstrom and enter code Lagerstrom to get 83% off plus 3 free months. The link is in my description. Let's get back to the pasta. After 3 minutes of simmering, my hand-cut pappardelle, or tagliatelle, whatever you want to call it, is ready to come out. But I do need to give it a quick slurp to make sure it's not still raw. And we're good. The pasta still has a little bit of bite and it's perfectly al dente. This dish is not gonna hit right at all if the pasta is overcooked. I repeat, do not overcook your pasta. Next, the noodles are gonna get moved over into my heated nonstick pan along with whatever pasta water they bring along. That should be about 3 tablespoons or so. Behind that, I'll add in another half cup of pasta water. I'll probably need more, but I don't wanna make this too wet. Insert clip of previous total failure here. It's too juicy, dude. Those noodles are swimming in it. So instead of repeating this failure, I'll add the water into this pan as I go. Now I'll give this pasta a quick toss to loosen up some of the starch, and then in goes 75 grams of nice tasting butter. I'm using some Kerrygold here because, like I mentioned earlier, this is a 2-ingredient sauce and the butter brings half of the flavor, so I prefer something with a lot of it. With the pan still over low heat, I'm gonna swirl and toss to get the butter emulsified with the starchy pasta water. Again, keep an eye on the amount of water in the pan. When done right, there should be a nice nice glossy opaque shine to it all like this. Next, I'll add in most of 75 grams of grated Parmesan cheese. Just like for the butter, I'm recommending that you use something of very high quality. Specifically, this is a 24-month imported Parmesan, and it's deeply nutty, almost sweet, and very, very umami. Don't use pre-grated Parmesan unless you're 100% sure that there's no cellulose added to keep it from caking. That won't melt properly and might actually curdle the sauce. Now I'll stir that all in, and right away I can tell this cheese has thickened this up a little bit too much. I want it saucier than that, so I'll add in another quarter cup or so of my pasta water, and then I'll stir that in to see where I'm at texturally. At this point, I'm off heat now because too much heat will cook this parm and it'll turn into a greasy mess. So pay attention from this point forward. I think this looks a touch loose now actually, so I'll add in the rest of my cheese. That's 75 grams of grated Parmesan in total, and for shibs and gibs, I'll throw in another pat of butter in there as well. After one last shake and toss to get that butter and cheese fully melted into the pasta, I think we're there. If we did this right, the pasta should be coated in a creamy but saucy, opaque, almost pearly looking cheese sauce. It might not look like much, but trust me, this is really luxurious, you guys. And we did it without a bunch of heavy cream. That makes these flavors way more in focus and way more delicious. To finish, I'll crack a bunch of freshly ground black pepper right on top and then sprinkle on some more aged Parmesan cheese. And that's it. Egg pasta, nice butter, and 24-month aged parm. This dish is unbelievably flavorful and comforting, and I think it will shock you how much lighter and more refined it is than the gluey, white, creamy versions from the mall. I hope you try this soon. Let's eat this thing.